You're listening to Boomers Today with your host, Frank Sampson.
Well, welcome to Boomers Today. I'm Frank Sampson. Of course, each week we bring you important and useful information on issues facing baby boomers, their parents, and other loved ones. And I just want to thank everybody for all their support. So many of you have listened to the show a number of different ways. Many of you have gone on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spreaker, Stitcher, iHeartRadio. Some of you have gone to our website at boomerstodayradio.com. And I can't thank you enough because you're spreading the word and our listeners are growing each and every day. And I think you're spreading the word, I believe, because we have such great guests on our show. And I'm not going to let you down today. We have with us Keren Etkin, who is the best-selling author of AgeTech Revolution, a book about the intersection of technology and aging. Etkin is the founder of Gerontology.com. That's a mouthful, Keren. A media platform that covers the global AgeTech ecosystem, and the AgeTech Academy, which offers online AgeTech education for entrepreneurs and elder care professionals. Etkin is a sought-after public speaker and advisor to AgeTech startups, investors in the longevity economy, care providers, and organizations who work on innovation and aging. She holds a master's in gerontology and a Bachelor of Science in Life Sciences from Ben-Gurion University. Keren, thank you so much for joining us on Boomers Today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Frank. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, and all the way from Israel. We're thrilled.
All the way from Israel.
All the way from it. Technology is great, isn't it, that we could do this? Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So, maybe you could help myself, our viewers, understand. I know you have a book called, which we'll talk about a little later, but the AgeTech Revolution. So, what is AgeTech? What do you refer when you say AgeTech?
So when I use the term AgeTech, I refer to technology that is built to tackle the challenges of aging. And it was created, hopefully, with and for older adults or those who care for them.
Wonderful. So, what was the catalyst in writing this book, AgeTech Revolution? Something in your family, just your own interests? Talk to us about that.
So I'm actually a gerontologist by trade, and I spent the first half of my career in community services for older adults and the second half in the tech industry. So in startups, developing tech solutions for older adults or for elder care organizations. And so I've been writing about the AgeTech ecosystem for a number of years now. I publish an annual ecosystem map that covers hundreds of startups who are active in this space. And after a couple of years, I felt like this ecosystem deserved a book to tell its story, because I've met so many people doing impactful work and being incredibly passionate about using the most cutting edge technology to tackle not just societal challenge, but personal challenge that they experienced with their families, with their older loved ones. And so I felt like it deserved a book, and I wrote it, and it's out.
Great. That's very, and we'll, as they say, it's called the AgeTech Revolution. We'll tell people in a little bit how they can get it. But so maybe you could help, maybe giving some examples of different solutions that are AgeTech solutions. I mean, I've seen it, as you know, I'm in the senior care industry and have been for some years now. And I've seen some pretty, we deal a lot with people with various forms of dementia. And certainly I've seen some technology out there to help people like that. Are you talking about that? Are you talking about people that are a little more independent, both? Maybe give us some examples.
So this is a great question. First of all, when I talk about the AgeTech ecosystem and we talk about older adults, the general cutoff that is used in research and in World Health Organization and UN and CDC statistics is the age of 65. And so above that age, you have hundreds or millions of people around the world who are healthy and active, right? It's not necessarily just for people who experience cognitive decline or physical decline. And so the age tech ecosystem is quite diverse these days. And if you were looking for tech solutions for older adults 10 years ago, all you would find are personal emergency response systems, right? Medical alerts, maybe some wandering GPS thingies, maybe some walkers, some hearing aids. Whereas these days you have so many solutions, from robotics to virtual reality solutions to any type of technology that utilizes AI to improve the health of older adults. It could be using wearables, it could be using other home sensors, it can be even platforms that help people get digital education, and platforms that help people start a business or participate in the gig economy and utilize their skills and their knowledge to continue to make a living and be productive in their later years. Even that could be considered under the AgeTech umbrella. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, well, that's it does, but I have some follow-up to that a little bit. So AI, I mean, I know what that stands for. Some people don't. Artificial intelligence. So maybe explain to our listeners a little bit more about that, and how does artificial intelligence work in this area? Maybe it's easier to give some examples of it, or whatever's easier.
Great question. Yeah. So one of the most saturated categories actually is this entire category of wearables, whether they're wearables for fall detection or wearables for like say, wellness types of wearables, and even the home sensors that are able to detect falls. Many of these companies incorporate artificial intelligence and machine learning in their product offerings. How do they do that? So these sensors, whether they are wearables or wall mounted or ceiling mounted, whatever, they are able to gather data continuously, and they are able to, let's say, create a baseline for a user. Let's say I walk 10,000 steps every day, and in the past week or so, I have not walked so many steps. Then that could be considered an anomaly by the artificial intelligence, and that could trigger an alert. And the same way goes for what Apple does with their Apple Watch. So Apple is now able to provide any user with the Apple Watch fall detection, which is like an unusual occurrence that happens. And with the iPhone, which millions of people have, you and I, if we have an iPhone and we carry it in our pockets on a daily basis, we are able to get a risk assessment for how likely we are to fall within the near future. So Apple doesn't necessarily, I'm sure they don't have engineers sitting in a dark room and going through your gait data, right? They have artificial intelligence that is able to detect any changes in your walking or gait patterns and let you know that something has changed, and they believe that you might be at risk.
Okay, so you were kind of reading my mind about fall detection. I know there's technology out there that, like you said, after they fall, they press a button for help, but the fall already occurred. All right. So you have somebody that's living alone. Is there really technology out there that could help that situation of helping to prevent a fall, an older adult, or do you need really to have a caregiver nearby, or whether it be a family or professional caregiver? Talk to us about that. I mean, it just kind of mind-boggling to me to understand how technology like that could really work. That would be great if it does, but mind-boggling to me.
So let's take it a step back. So I'm sure you know as a senior care expert that fall prevention is a huge topic, and actually you can do a lot before you use any type of technology to prevent falls, right? Hand railings, remove loose carpets, exercise, all of that can help potentially prevent falls. Now that you've done all of that, there is technology out there today that can not just detect a fall, but hopefully prevent. So how would you do that? Even by installing light bulbs that are mounted on the walls in your knee level, that are motion activated, that just turn on the light when someone gets out of bed in the middle of the night to walk to the bathroom. That in and of itself could prevent a fall. And I've installed these types of light bulbs in my grandparents' homes. There are also wall-mounted lamps that will look like any regular lamp and will do a similar thing. And they will also be used if there is a fall to detect it and to call the emergency call center. And you're right that there is currently no replacement to having a human at your side helping you get out of bed should you need to get out of bed and use the bathroom in the middle of the night. However, not everyone has a family member that lives with them, and not everyone can afford a caregiver to stay with them at night. And these technology solutions are better than nothing. And
Right. So no,
there are so many out there. So it's really, you can really get to pick and choose today what works for you.
Great. And in your book, I'm going to jump ahead because I was going to hold off, but I'm jumping ahead now to your book. Do you get into these types of technologies in your book and how people could get this, how they can get it?
So many of these solutions are actually available wherever you get your iPhone or Apple Watch. Like you could just get some of this stuff on Amazon these days.
Yeah.
And whatever isn't available on Amazon, you can usually get it directly. You can usually purchase directly from the company. And we get into some of the examples for some of these solutions in this book, but I don't specifically mention where to get them. And also, there are really hundreds of companies, if not more, working on these types of solutions. Even some of the biggest tech companies in the world, like Amazon and Apple, now have offerings specifically for older adults. So one book isn't really enough to get into all of that.
Right. But, in your book, you do talk a lot about the age tech ecosystem. Ecosystem is a term that's used quite a bit. Explain what you mean by that. Who are the participants in this ecosystem? Help our listeners understand exactly what that means.
This is a great question. So when I refer to the AgeTech ecosystem, it's really it's easy to think that a tech ecosystem only has tech companies, but it isn't the case in most cases, and it especially isn't the case for the AgeTech ecosystem. And what do I mean by that? So yes, of course, you have the traditional players, you have the tech companies, and you have the investors, and you have the accelerators. And on top of that, you have the older adults who are stakeholders in this ecosystem. You have elder care providers, you have family caregivers, you have nonprofits, you have government entities. So all of these different people or organizations are actively participating in the AgeTech ecosystem, whether it is through partnering with startups as design partners, if you're a big elder care organization and you have an innovation department, or if you're an older adult, you could potentially participate in pilots and in user interviews and give your input to some of these entrepreneurs and innovators on what you as an older adult would like them to build for you. And family caregivers can do the same. So it's really a really diverse ecosystem, and I believe that anyone who wants to participate can find a way to do so.
Great. So Keren, we're going to take a real quick break, I promise, just to recognize our sponsor. And we come back, I want to talk to you more what you mentioned, how maybe older adults could participate in helping to create some of these solutions. And we'll talk a little bit about the future, where age tech is going, okay? So, do you know anybody who may be concerned about an older driver? Well, Senior Care Authority's Beyond Driving with Dignity program is a facilitated self-assessment program for older drivers. This program has been designed to serve as a vital tool to facilitate older drivers and their families as they make the appropriate decisions regarding the future of one's safe driving career. If the individual is a safe driver, an advisor will provide him or her with strategies on how to remain a safe driver as they progress through the aging process. If driving retirement is the appropriate decision, then the individual and their family are offered possible alternatives, resources, and a specific plan to ensure a smooth and successful transition from the driver's seat to the passenger seat. So to learn more, you could go to www.beyonddrivingwithdignity.com, or you could call 877-907-8841 to connect with a Senior Care Authority advisor in your area. We're back with Keren Etkin, who's a best-selling author of the AgeTech Revolution. So you mentioned before the break, Keren, that you kind of referred that maybe people could participate and maybe some pilots or maybe get involved in various age tech solutions. Tell us a little more detail about that.
So it really somewhat depends on where people live. So some people live close to a university or some type of research institute that does work that around aging and age tech. So if we have any Canadian listeners in the audience, then there's the Center for Aging and Brain Health Innovation and Age Well in Canada that have these programs in which older adults can participate in, and family caregivers, and that's important too. And if people who live in California, they might be able to join the Longevity Explorers, which is a wonderful community of older adults who is actively working with startups and working with tech companies on some of these solutions. And there's also, of course, work being done by AgeLab at MIT. So if you're in the Boston, Massachusetts area, that could be one way to go. And the ARP has some of these programs. So there was really... there are many opportunities to participate. And also, if you live nowhere near any types of research institutes, or you don't really have access to these organizations, but you still want to participate, then there are actually online platforms that will not only invite you in to be an interviewee for some of these startups, but you could also potentially get paid to answer surveys, to get on Zoom calls with founders and product developers to answer some questions. So there is really, now that everything is online, it's become infinitely easier to participate if that's something people are interested in.
Great. So how would people learn more about what you're doing, your organization, your book? It's commercial time. Go ahead.
So if you want to learn more about the AgeTech ecosystem and just get a bird's view on the ecosystem as a whole, check out the Gerontology.com. We have the annual AgeTech market map. And if you want to read the AgeTech Revolution, then it's available on Amazon, and it will soon be also available on as an audiobook format in the next few weeks. So it's
That's exciting. That's exciting. Well, what's your, you have plans for another book? You've been thinking about it already, or not yet?
I'm thinking about it, but I can't say much yet.
All right. You'd have to shoot me, and it's tough to do that through the computer here. So, all right, great. So tell us what's most exciting to you in this whole age tech, where, today, or where it's going. What do you see, fast forward 5 years from now, which is maybe a long time in the technology field, but 10 years from now, even 2 years, whatever you'd like, however you'd like to answer that. But where do you see things going, and what's exciting you the most?
So I'm mostly excited about right now in the very short term, I'm mostly excited about autonomous vehicles, which might not be considered strictly AgeTech solutions, but I think they will really be a game changer for older adults who no longer want to or can't safely drive themselves, because as you probably know, not being able to drive puts a major dent in your independence. So I'm incredibly excited about that because it's supposed to be just around the corner. And if I'm looking far into the future, I expect that technology will be much more ambient and much more intuitive. And when I say ambient, I mean that it's very likely that in a few decades, sensors will be embedded in the walls of our homes, and the home will sense what we need and be able to provide what we need, which again could be a game changer for aging in place, for example. And intuitive interfaces are already here somewhat. I mean, we have voice enabled almost everything these days, and I feel like that is a much more intuitive user interfaces than a keyboard and a mouse and even a touch screen. And if we're looking at like 30 or 40 years down the line, when I am older, I fully expect that when I'm in my 80s, if I will need any type of ADL assistance, it's very likely that I will have a robot in my home to assist me with my daily needs. Because if we look at the demographics, it's very likely that my children won't be able to provide care for me, and it's also possible that I won't be able to buy the care, and I won't be able, even if I have the funds, I might not be able to hire a professional caregivers, because the demographic trend, the way it's going, it means that we will simply not have enough humans to care for us by the time I'm older. So I'm really looking forward to robotics, to home automation, and of course to autonomous vehicles. And who knows?
I agree 100% with everything you just said. I mentioned that to people about the self-driving, or what you call autonomous vehicles, and people go, oh, they get a little nervous about that, but they're fine tuning that. And I think there's going to be statistics that will show it's safer probably than a human being behind the wheel. And I think it could be a tremendous option for people, like I brought up before, about people maybe it's not safe for them to drive anymore. So I agree with you. But I do want to talk further about robotics. You just happened to mention, maybe 30 years from now. Don't you think that can happen a lot sooner than that, number one? And number two, the problems, at least here in the US, I can't speak for Israel, I don't know enough about the statistics, but I have to believe it's similar, that there's a caregiver shortage. And whether it's due to what happened with COVID, to pay scale, everything about it. Do you think that that's going to happen maybe quicker than we think?
I think that some elements of robotics will be integrated into the healthcare system and into direct care. By, for example, helping caregivers by using this sort of exoskeleton, helping caregivers with the heavy lifting of patients and care recipients and avoiding injury. So I believe that those types of robotics will be integrated sooner, much sooner than 30 years down the line. But if we're looking at like science fiction type of robots, walking, talking, helping you pick up your groceries from the store and putting them safely in the pantry and in the fridge. I don't know how long that's going to happen. Yeah, it could be a while.
Yeah. I can't. Loneliness is a huge issue for seniors today. It's probably, in my opinion, one of the biggest problems there is. And they need people to talk to. It'd be great if you had somebody to talk to, but I don't. That was robotic. But as you say, it's probably a ways off.
Well, funny that you're mentioning it, because the first startup that I got to work in was Intuition Robotics, and we actually built a social robot for older adults. So it's not a walking robot. It's a tabletop robot, but it is able to have interact using voice, using sound effects, using lights, using body language. And it's not just like a smart speaker that you just tell the smart speaker what you want and it tells you the weather. But Elikio, the robot that we built, is actually able to initiate interaction. So it's able to decide whether the user would maybe want something out of her at this particular moment and say, hey, do you want to listen to a joke? Do you want to play a cognitive game? Do you want to send a text message to your grandchild? And the company has actually published a white paper fairly recently, and they have shown that Elikio was actually able to reduce loneliness for users that she spent quite some time with. So that's promising.
That's very promising. So how do people keep up to date on all this? I mean, I learned a lot from you just on this call, and I'm in the business. So how do people who are just not following day to day what's going on, how do they keep up to date? It's pretty fast paced.
So it is fast paced. So the best way to stay up to date is to, first of all, you can definitely head over to the Gerontologist and sign up for updates. We have a monthly newsletter. I would also recommend signing up for Lori Orlov's newsletter, which is Aging and Health Tech Watch. So it is challenging to stay up to date, but there are some newsletters out there, mine included, that I think do a good job at helping people stay, like keep their finger on the pulse while not being overwhelmed, because technology can be overwhelming. It is fast paced. There is a lot going on, and it's just getting faster and faster. But just getting a weekly or monthly newsletter, I feel like it's the right amount for most people.
I want to make sure people, I would totally agree. I want to just make sure people are going to the correct website. It's the Gerontologist. So it's the Gerontologist, Gerontechnologist.com. Did I get it right?
I have no idea.
Okay, I think I got it right. So, Keren, this has been very enlightening. I appreciate it. Please stay in touch with us and any new technologies coming out there that you want to share. We'd love to have you back on the show, hopefully in the near future. All right.
Hopefully. Thank you so much for inviting me, Frank.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for joining us on Boomers Today. Please be safe out there, and we'll talk to everybody real soon.
You've been listening to Boomers Today with Frank Sampson. To learn more about today's show, visit boomerstodayradio.com and join us next time for another edition of Boomers Today.